The rain hammered against Sarah Chen's windshield like bullets, each drop exploding in a starburst of reflected headlight. Her hands gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white, fighting to keep her sedan on the winding country road as the wind threatened to push her into the ditch. She shouldn't have taken this route. The GPS had suggested the main highway, but Sarah had chosen the back roads, desperate to avoid any chance encounters with reporters or former colleagues who might recognize her. 3 months since the scandal broke, and she still felt like a hunted animal. Disgraced marketing executive caught in embezzlement scheme, the headlines had screamed. Never mind that she'd been framed by her business partner. Never mind that she'd lost her life savings trying to pay back money she'd never stolen. The court of public opinion had already rendered its verdict. A massive gust of wind slammed into her car, and Sarah felt the back wheels lose traction. The sedan skidded sideways, tires screaming against wet asphalt, before crashing through a wooden fence and coming to rest in a muddy field. Sarah sat in the sudden silence, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the storm. Steam rose from her crumpled hood. The engine was dead, and through her shattered windshield, she could see she was in the middle of nowhere, just rolling hills, scattered trees bending under the wind's assault, and in the distance, a single light burning in what looked like a farmhouse. She grabbed her phone. No signal, of course. The rain had intensified, turning the world outside into a wall of water. Sarah had no choice. She pulled her jacket over her head and stepped out into the storm. The mud sucked at her designer heels with each step. Within seconds, she was soaked to the bone, her carefully styled hair plastered to her skull. The wind was so strong she had to lean into it just to move forward, each step a battle against nature's fury. The farmhouse seemed impossibly far, a beacon of light that danced and wavered through the curtain of rain. Sarah's feet slipped repeatedly in the mud, and she fell to her knees more than once, her hands sinking into the cold, wet earth. She was perhaps halfway across the field when she heard it, the thunder of hoofbeats cutting through the storm. Sarah looked up, rain streaming into her eyes, and saw a figure emerging from the darkness like something out of a dream or nightmare, a horse and rider moving through the tempest with surprising grace. The horse was massive, dark as the storm itself, its coat slick with rain, and the man astride it sat tall in the saddle, a silhouette against the distant farmhouse light. They came to a stop several feet from her, and Sarah struggled to her feet, swaying with exhaustion. Through the sheets of rain, she could barely make out his face, but she saw the moment he truly looked at her, and something in his posture changed completely. The rider went utterly still, as if struck by lightning. Even through the storm, Sarah could feel the weight of his stare. He looked at her as if she were a ghost, not frightening, but impossible. Something he'd given up hoping to see. Something that couldn't be real, but somehow was. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The rain hammered down, the wind howled, and the man on the horse simply stared at her with an expression of such stunned disbelief that Sarah wondered if he might turn and ride away, convinced she was a hallucination. Then he seemed to shake himself, and in one fluid motion, he dismounted. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a long oilskin coat that made him look like something from another century. As he approached, Sarah could finally see his face, weathered, handsome, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and the most startling green eyes she'd ever seen. "You're real," he said, and his voice was rough, as if he hadn't used it in a long time. It wasn't a question, but a statement of wonder. Yes, Sarah managed through chattering teeth. "My car went off the road. I was trying to reach the house." "You can't walk in this," he interrupted, already moving closer. "The storm's getting worse. You'll die of exposure before you make it another 100 yards. Without waiting for permission, he shrugged out of his oilskin coat and draped it over her shoulders. The warmth of it, still heated by his body, was almost painfully welcome. Then he turned to his horse, speaking in low, soothing tones to the animal who stood patient despite the chaos around them. "I'm Marcus Reid," he said, turning back to her. "Can you ride?" Not really, no. It's all right. I've got you." And before Sarah could protest, his hands were at her waist, strong and sure, lifting her into the saddle with surprising gentleness. The horse shifted beneath her, powerful muscles moving, and Sarah grabbed desperately at the saddle horn. Marcus swung up behind her in one smooth motion, his arms coming around her to grasp the reins. She was suddenly enveloped by his presence, his chest solid against her back, his arms bracketing her, the scent of rain and leather and something indefinably him. "Hold on," he said softly, his breath warm against her ear despite the cold. The horse moved forward at Marcus's command, and Sarah found herself pressed back against him as they rode through the storm. She could feel his heartbeat through her back, steady and strong, and somehow that rhythm was more comforting than anything else in this surreal moment. They reached the farmhouse in what felt like both an eternity and an instant. Marcus dismounted first, then reached up to help her down, his hands steady at her waist. When her feet touched the ground, her legs nearly buckled, and his grip tightened, holding her upright. "Easy," he murmured. "I've got you." He led the horse to the barn with one hand, the other still supporting her elbow, as if afraid she might collapse. Inside the barn, it was marginally drier, and Sarah watched through exhausted eyes as Marcus efficiently removed the horse's tack, speaking to the animal in those same low, soothing tones. "This is Storm," he said, and there was something almost tender in how he stroked the horse's neck. He doesn't usually go out in weather like this. But something made me check the fields tonight. Something told me... He trailed off, shaking his head as if the thought was too strange to voice. Then he turned back to her. And that look was there again. Wonder mixed with something that looked almost like fear, as if she might vanish if he looked away. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let's get you inside before you catch pneumonia." The warmth of the house enveloped her like an embrace. The kitchen was simple but clean, with handmade wooden cabinets and a stone fireplace crackling with a cheerful fire. The smell of fresh bread and something savory cooking filled the air. "Here," Marcus said, grabbing a thick towel from a nearby closet. "Dry off before you catch pneumonia." "Sarah Chen," she said, accepting the towel gratefully, noting how he kept his distance now that they were inside, as if the intimacy of the ride had been a temporary necessity. "I'm really sorry to bother you. I know it's late and you don't know me from... When did you last eat?" Marcus interrupted, his eyes taking in her thin frame, the dark circles under her eyes. This morning, I think?" Sarah realized she couldn't remember. The past few days had been a blur of driving, cheap motels, and avoiding human contact. Without another word, Marcus moved to the stove and began ladling soup into a bowl. His movements were economical, practiced, but there was something almost reverent about the way he handled the food, as if feeding someone was a sacred act. "Vegetable beef," he said, placing the bowl on the table along with a thick slice of homemade bread. "My own vegetables, beef from the Hendersons down the road." Sarah took a tentative sip and nearly moaned with pleasure. It was the best soup she'd ever tasted, rich, complex, with layers of flavor that spoke of hours of careful preparation. "This is incredible," she said. "Are you a chef?" Marcus shook his head, pouring himself a cup of coffee but not sitting down. "Just a farmer. Been cooking for myself for a while now." There was something in his tone that discouraged further questions. Sarah ate in grateful silence, feeling strength return to her body with each spoonful. Outside, the storm continued its assault, but here in this warm kitchen, she felt safe for the first time in months. "The phone's over there if you need to call someone," Marcus said, gesturing to an old landline on the counter. "There's no one to call," Sarah admitted before she could stop herself. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Marcus studied her face for a long moment. "Running from something?" Sarah's laugh was bitter. "More like running to nothing. I don't even know where I'm going." "Sometimes that's the only way to find where you belong," Marcus said quietly. Before Sarah could ask what he meant, a loud crack echoed through the house, followed by a tremendous crash. Marcus was at the window in an instant, peering out into the storm. "Tree came down across the road," he said grimly. "Big oak. You won't be leaving tonight, maybe not tomorrow either. Road crew won't come out until this storm passes." Sarah felt a flutter of panic. "I can't impose..." "Guest room's upstairs, second door on the right," Marcus said firmly. Storm's supposed to last through tomorrow night. You'll be safe here." That night, lying in a bed that smelled of lavender and fresh air, Sarah stared at the ceiling and listened to the storm rage outside. She should have been worried about her car, about the delay in her aimless journey to nowhere. Instead, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months: peace. She woke to the smell of bacon and coffee and sunlight streaming through lace curtains. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and sparkling. From her window, she could see rolling fields dotted with cattle, a red barn that looked like something from a postcard, and Marcus himself, already at work, repairing the fence her car had destroyed. In the kitchen, she found a plate of eggs, bacon, and fresh biscuits waiting for her, along with a pot of coffee that could wake the dead. A note in careful handwriting read, "Help yourself. Back by noon." Sarah ate slowly, savoring every bite. Through the window, she watched Marcus work. His movements were methodical, efficient, but she noticed how he paused occasionally to stroke the neck of a curious cow or scratch behind the ears of a golden retriever that had appeared from somewhere. After breakfast, she ventured outside. The air smelled of rain and growing things, so different from the exhaust and concrete of the city. Her heels were useless in the mud, so she kicked them off and walked barefoot through the grass. "You're up early," Marcus said as she approached the fence. Up close, she could see the careful craftsmanship in his work. Each post perfectly aligned, each wire stretched to exactly the right tension. "City habit," Sarah said. "Though I guess I'm not really a city person anymore." Marcus hammered in another post before responding. "What were you in the city?" "Marketing executive. Or I was, until..." She trailed off, not sure how much to reveal. "Until you weren't," Marcus finished gently. "I know something about that." "What did you do? Before farming, I mean." Marcus's hands stilled on the fence post. For a moment, Sarah thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I was a doctor. Pediatric surgeon." The words hung in the air between them. Sarah could see the weight of them in his shoulders, the careful way he didn't meet her eyes. "What happened?" she asked softly. Marcus resumed his hammering, each blow precise and controlled. "Lost a patient, 7-year-old girl, car accident. I'd operated on hundreds of kids, saved most of them, but Emma..." His voice caught slightly on the name. "I made a mistake. One small miscalculation, and she was gone." Sarah felt her heart clench. "Marcus, that's..." Her parents sued, of course. They had every right to. But it wasn't about the money for me. I couldn't trust my hands anymore. Couldn't bear the thought of another child on my table, another family counting on me. He looked up then, his green eyes haunted. "So I came here. Been here 3 years now." "And you've never gone back?" "To what?" "I'm a farmer now. This is my life." But even as he said it, Sarah could hear the uncertainty in his voice, the question mark at the end of his declaration. They worked together in comfortable silence after that, Sarah holding fence posts steady while Marcus secured them. She found herself studying his hands, strong, steady, with the long fingers of a surgeon. Hands that had once held the power to heal, now dedicated to simpler tasks. "You know," she said as they moved to the next section, "in marketing, we had a saying, the story isn't over until the customer stops listening. Maybe your story isn't over either." Marcus paused in his work. "What's your story, Sarah? The real one?" So she told him. About her business partner, David, who'd been skimming money from client accounts for years. About how he'd made it look like she was involved when the scheme finally unraveled. About the investigators who didn't believe her, the clients who felt betrayed, the media circus that had destroyed her reputation. "I lost everything," she said, surprised by how good it felt to finally tell someone the truth. "My job, my apartment, my savings trying to pay back money I never took. My own family thinks I'm guilty, so I got in my car and started driving. And I honestly don't know where I'm going or what I'm going to do when I get there." Marcus had stopped working entirely now, his full attention on her words. "Do you think I'm guilty?" Sarah asked. "No," he said without hesitation. "I've seen guilt, Sarah. It has a different shape than what you're carrying." "Then what am I carrying?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "Shame that isn't yours to bear, and fear that it might be." The simple truth of his words hit her like a physical blow. Sarah felt tears she'd been holding back for months finally spill over. "I keep thinking, what if they're right? What if I was so blind, so trusting that I might as well be guilty? What if I'm just a fool who—" "Stop!" Marcus's voice was firm but gentle. He set down his hammer and turned to face her fully. "I know something about carrying guilt that isn't yours. It'll eat you alive if you let it. But how do you let it go?" "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted. "But maybe we can figure it out together." The next few days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Sarah's car needed extensive repairs that would take time to order parts for, and Marcus insisted she stay rather than pay for an expensive hotel in town. She found herself falling into the rhythm of farm life, waking with the sun, helping with chores, sharing simple meals. She learned that Marcus grew most of his own food, that he read voraciously, that he played guitar badly but with enthusiasm. She discovered that he still subscribed to medical journals, though he claimed it was just habit. She noticed how his hands moved when he talked about surgery, precise, graceful, alive with remembered purpose. Marcus learned that Sarah had a degree in psychology before she'd switched to marketing, that she spoke 3 languages, that she had a gift for seeing patterns others missed. He saw how she analyzed problems, breaking them down into manageable pieces, finding solutions where others saw only obstacles. "You should meet Doc Peterson," Marcus said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "He runs the free clinic in town. Been trying to expand their outreach program but can't figure out the logistics." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you've been here 4 days and you've already reorganized my filing system, streamlined my feed ordering process, and figured out a more efficient route for checking the cattle. You're a problem solver, Sarah. Maybe that's what you should be solving." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "What about you? When are you going to solve your own problem?" "What problem?" "The fact that you're still a doctor? You can try to bury it under fence posts and feed schedules, but I see how you move, how you think. Yesterday when that calf was sick, you didn't just treat it, you diagnosed it. Your hands knew exactly what to do." Marcus stood abruptly, walking to the porch railing. "That's different. Animals don't have families who trust you with their most precious—" "Don't they?" Sarah interrupted. "I saw how that cow looked at you when you were helping her calf. That wasn't just trust, Marcus. That was faith." Before Marcus could respond, headlights swept across the driveway. A pickup truck pulled up, and a man in his 60s climbed out, moving with the careful gait of someone whose joints had seen better days. "Doc Peterson," Marcus called, and Sarah heard surprise in his voice. "What brings you out here so late?" "Emergency," the older man replied, climbing the porch steps. "Car accident on Highway 9. Family of 4, including 2 kids. County hospital's swamped with that multi-car pileup from this afternoon, and the nearest trauma center is 3 hours away." He paused, looking directly at Marcus. "I need your help." Sarah watched the color drain from Marcus's face. "Jim, you know I can't." "Can't or won't." Doc Peterson's voice was gentle but firm. "Marcus, I've been practicing medicine for 40 years. I've seen doctors make mistakes, and I've seen them learn from those mistakes and become better healers because of them. What I haven't seen is a surgeon with your skills waste those gifts because of one tragedy. You don't understand? I understand that there are 2 children bleeding in my clinic right now, and you're the best pediatric surgeon within 500 miles. Doc Peterson's eyes flicked to Sarah, then back to Marcus. "Sometimes we don't get to choose our moments of redemption. Sometimes they choose us." Sarah watched Marcus struggle, saw the war between fear and purpose playing out across his face. Without thinking, she stood and placed her hand on his arm. "I'll drive," she said quietly. Marcus looked at her, his green eyes wide with something between terror and hope. "Sarah, you don't understand what you're asking. I understand that children need you. I understand that you have a gift that could save lives. And I understand that sometimes the scariest thing we can do is the right thing." She squeezed his arm gently. "But I also understand that you don't have to do it alone." For a moment, the only sound was the night breeze rustling through the trees. Then Marcus nodded once, sharp and decisive. "Let me get my bag." The drive to town was silent except for Doc Peterson's directions from the back seat. Sarah could feel the tension radiating from Marcus, could see his hands clenching and unclenching in his lap. As they pulled up to the small clinic, she reached over and covered his hands with hers. "You've got this," she said simply. Inside the clinic, chaos reigned. The family from the accident was spread across 3 examination rooms. Parents with minor injuries, a teenage daughter with a broken arm, and in the back room, a boy who couldn't have been more than 8, his face pale with shock and pain. "Abdominal trauma," Doc Peterson explained quickly. "Possible internal bleeding. I've stabilized him, but he needs surgery." Marcus stood in the doorway for a moment, and Sarah could see him transform. The uncertain farmer disappeared, replaced by someone who moved with purpose and authority. He washed his hands methodically, then approached the boy's bedside. "Hey there, buddy," Marcus said, his voice calm and reassuring. "I'm Dr. Reid. What's your name?" "Tyler," the boy whispered. "Well, Tyler, you've had quite an adventure tonight, haven't you? But don't worry, we're going to take good care of you." What followed was 3 hours of intense, precise work. Sarah found herself assisting where she could, following Marcus's quiet instructions, watching in amazement as his hands moved with remembered skill and confidence. This was who he was meant to be, she realized. Not a farmer hiding from his past, but a healer embracing his purpose. When it was over, when Tyler was stable and sleeping peacefully, Marcus slumped against the wall outside the operating room. His scrubs were sweat-stained, his hair disheveled, but his eyes were alive in a way Sarah hadn't seen before. "How do you feel?" she asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Scared," he said finally. "But also, right. For the first time in 3 years, I feel right." Doc Peterson emerged from checking on the family. "Beautiful work, Marcus. That boy's going to make a full recovery because of you." It was a team effort, Marcus said, but Sarah could hear the satisfaction in his voice. The quiet pride of a job well done. "I meant what I said earlier," Doc Peterson continued. "We need someone like you here. The county's been trying to fund a trauma center for years, but we need a surgeon willing to lead the program. The pay's not much compared to the city, but the work matters." Sarah watched Marcus consider this, saw the possibility taking root in his mind. "Can I think about it?" Marcus asked. "Take all the time you need, but don't take too long. There are more Tylers out there who need you." On the drive home, Sarah found herself thinking about second chances, about the strange ways life could redirect you toward your true purpose. She'd come to this farm as a refugee from her own disaster, but somehow in helping Marcus find his way back to healing, she'd found something she didn't even know she was looking for. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "How sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to the best thing," Sarah said. "If I hadn't been framed, I never would have been driving that road in the storm. I never would have met you. And if I hadn't lost Emma, I never would have been here for you to meet." They were both quiet for a moment, contemplating the strange mathematics of fate. "So what happens now?" Sarah asked as they pulled into Marcus's driveway. "Now we figure out what comes next. Together if you want." Sarah looked at him in surprise. "Together?" Doc Peterson wasn't just talking about needing a surgeon. He's been trying to get funding for community outreach programs, health education initiatives, preventive care for underserved populations. It's the kind of complex project that needs someone who understands systems, someone who can see the big picture and make it work. Marcus paused. "Someone like you. You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a purpose. A chance to use your skills to help people who really need it. The pay would be terrible, the work would be hard, and you'd be stuck in the middle of nowhere with a recovering surgeon who's still figuring out how to trust his hands again." Sarah felt something bloom in her chest. Hope. Possibility. The first glimpse of a future that looked like something she might actually want. When you put it like that, How could I refuse? Marcus smiled then, the first real smile she'd seen from him since they'd met. So you'll stay? I'll stay, Sarah said. But I have one condition. What's that? You teach me to make that soup. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the lobby of the newly opened Cedar County Community Health Center, watching Marcus examine a little girl who'd fallen off her bicycle. The child was giggling as he checked her scraped knee, completely at ease with the gentle doctor who made funny faces while he cleaned her wound. Dr. Reid is the best, the girl's mother said to Sarah. When Jenny broke her arm last month, he explained everything so carefully, made sure she wasn't scared. We're so lucky to have him here. Sarah smiled, remembering the terrified man who'd been afraid to trust his own hands. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been sleepless nights, moments of doubt, the gradual rebuilding of confidence. But Marcus had found his way back to who he was meant to be. As for Sarah, she'd discovered that her real talent wasn't in selling products to people who didn't need them, but in connecting resources with needs, in building bridges between problems and solutions. The community health center's outreach programs were thriving, bringing preventive care to rural families who'd never had access to it before. Ms. Chen, a voice interrupted her thoughts. Sarah turned to see a young woman with a notebook and camera, a reporter from the county newspaper. I was hoping to interview you about the health center's success. The numbers are incredible. You've increased access to care by 300% in just 6 months. Sarah glanced toward Marcus, who was now bandaging the little girl's knee with exaggerated care. It's not about the numbers, she said. It's about the people. Every person who gets the care they need, every family that doesn't have to choose between medicine and groceries, that's what matters. But surely you're proud of what you've accomplished. Coming from the city, building all this from nothing? Sarah considered the question. A year ago, she might have talked about metrics and market penetration, about strategic planning and resource optimization. Now she thought about Tyler, fully recovered and back to playing soccer. About the elderly farmer who'd caught his diabetes early thanks to their screening program. About Marcus, who'd found his way back to healing. I'm proud of what we've all accomplished together, she said finally. But this isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning. That evening, Sarah and Marcus sat on their porch. It had become their porch somewhere along the way, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. The farmhouse had been transformed too, no longer the refuge of a man hiding from his past, but the home of two people building a future together. Regrets? Marcus asked, a question that had become their evening ritual. Only one, Sarah said, settling into the crook of his arm. I wish I could go back and thank David. Marcus looked at her in surprise. Thank him? For framing you? For forcing me to leave? For making me take that drive in the storm? For leading me to exactly where I needed to be? Sarah smiled up at him. What about you? Any regrets? Marcus was quiet for a moment, his surgeon's hands gentle as they traced patterns on her arm. I regret the time I wasted being afraid. But I don't regret the path that brought me to you. Even Emma? It was a question Sarah had never asked before, too sacred and painful to touch. But she sensed that Marcus was ready for it now. Even Emma, he said quietly. I'll always carry the sadness of losing her. But I think she'd be happy that her story helped me find my way back to saving other children. That her memory became part of something bigger. As if summoned by their conversation, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Doc Peterson. Emergency coming in. Teenage boy, motorcycle accident. Need you here in 20 minutes. Marcus stood without hesitation, already reaching for his keys. The fear that had once paralyzed him was gone, replaced by the quiet confidence of a man who knew his purpose. I'll drive, Sarah said, just as she had that first night. No need, Marcus replied, kissing her forehead. I've got this, and he did. They both did. As Sarah watched Marcus drive away, she thought about the strange journey that had brought them both to this moment. Two broken people who'd found each other in a storm, who'd learned that sometimes the worst disasters were just life's way of redirecting you toward your true destination. Her phone rang. Probably someone from the health center with a question about tomorrow's outreach clinic. Sarah Chen, former disgraced executive, current rural health coordinator, answered with a smile in her voice. Cedar County Community Health, this is Sarah. How can I help you? Because that, she'd learned, was the most important question of all. Not who are you running from or what are you hiding from, but how can you help? How can you take the gifts you've been given, even the painful ones, and use them to make someone else's life a little bit better? The storm that had brought her to Marcus's door had long since passed. But the changes it had set in motion would ripple outward for years to come, touching lives they might never even know about. And that, Sarah thought as she settled in to handle whatever crisis awaited, was the most beautiful kind of transformation of all.